we're here with retired Chief Justice Burley Mitchell. I'm so happy to be here. I really appreciate you letting us come in and invade your home a little bit.
Thank you. We're delighted to have you.
Well, thank you. So tell me a little bit about your personal and professional background. What got you to the point where you really were such an influential part of North Carolina's judiciary?
It was a strange road. I kind of grew up all over the country because of World War II and that sort of thing, you know. And somewhere in there I deviated from the path and dropped out of school and joined the Marines when I was underage. And
How old were you when you first went in?
15.
15?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I thought you were going to say 17.
I
You
had
were 15?
It right there in Paris Island.
Oh my gosh.
They could.
That's crazy.
I was where they could mold
You
me.
couldn't drive a car.
Anyway, I got out there and they sent me back, so I came back to Broughton High School in Raleigh and stayed less than a year, and then I became of age and joined the Navy. So I spent the next 4 years overseas, and it was a different path, but for me it was probably the very best thing that could have happened. You know, I mean, got to see some of the world, got a chance to grow up a little bit,
Right.
and then I came home and I liked learning. I went through NC State in 3 years, got a degree, and then went to Carolina Law School, and really took to that. I was president of my class over there and everything, and got graduated from law school and went into the Attorney General's office, and that's where I really got into public life as an assistant attorney general. And then Governor Scott appointed me to district attorney in Wake County, and I was reelected there. And Governor Hunt, God bless him, put me on the Court of Appeals. I stayed there 2 years, and he asked me to come off the Court of Appeals, and I was Secretary of Crime Control and Public Safety, which was a fantastic job, working with the greatest people, the National Guard, the Highway Patrol, alcohol law enforcement. It was a wonderful job. And then from there, I went on the Supreme Court as an Associate Justice. And it was traditional, the senior justice was, we were a one-party state, so it was always a senior justice who was named chief. And Governor Hunt again appointed me Chief Justice, and I was reelected twice, I guess. So, and it was during a time when, just as now, there were a lot more than normal hard issues coming up, hard fought issues. Not too long before I retired, of course, we had the Leandro case, which was, the argument was, well, that just means you got to have a schoolhouse there. There's no quality test. You know, if there's a school there and people can go, whether they get an education or not. In that opinion, we said, no, it's meaningless if there's not a quality issue in there, you know, that an education without quality is no education at all, that it's meaningless and void. And since then, people have been wrestling with trying to apply it. The main point of Leandro is that the state has a duty to provide and pay for the education. Now, whichever actor comes forward with the check is something I left others to deal with. I gave them the hot potato and took off. You know?
Well, I mean, that shows you what an influence that you've had over the years in some of these really big core cases in North Carolina that sort of shaped who we are, I feel like, which is not, I mean, it's a good thing. I think we're entrepreneurial. We've got a lot of respect for history, but think innovatively. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen over your time in leadership in North Carolina.
Well, I've seen a lot of change, you know. My political awareness started in 1948. I wasn't but 8 years old. Now this is 4 years or 3 years after World War II. Most of the roads were not paved. I used to go visit my grandmother 26 miles from downtown Raleigh,
Right.
and slip and slide on red clay roads. And when we got there was no electricity, no running water. People were still farming with animals, mules, you know. You were all small farms, family farms. And then along came Car Scott, and then after him, I'm skipping some, but after who was a real progressive. Now, I'm gonna say liberal. It was progress.
Right.
Roads, schools, which is what gives you jobs, which is what makes the world go round. Then after Carr, probably the next real innovator was Cherry Sanford, who was big education governor and supported John Kennedy and got us a lot of federal programs down here, you know. Then along came Jim Hunt, which changed North Carolina irrevocably and for the good. And I observed that closely. I was here in Raleigh. I was in public office. I was a DA when he got here.
Okay.
And we served together the whole time, and more than any North Carolinian in at least the last couple of 100 years changed this state, and for the better. He went to bed late, got up early, every day of the week. It's like he thought, I've got to get all of this done before I die, you know, which meant now. He created more schools, got more money for the university. I'm not sure we're producing any people like that anymore, but then I'm not sure we ever did.
Right. Well,
you know?
Well, that's the question. Do you think that we are more polarized? Are we moving away from that, grand plan, mission-driven work?
We always had divisions, but in the legislature, state legislature and Congress, people disagreed and disagreed strongly, but they didn't get into personal hostility and you know, all that sort of thing, and they could work together. If I was going to hope people would do anything, and it would be to stop focusing on what you disagree about and find out, okay, now look, you and I disagree on everything in the world. What is it we agree on?
Right.
And then let's get together and get that done. And if you do, it seems to me, if you do one thing like that, then you become closer as human beings, and it's easier to do the next one.
Sure.
And again, going back to Governor Hunt, I don't care how much people had let him down or how contrary they'd been to his programs. When he saw him, how you doing, friend? You know, we're going to do great things together. And he did.
Sure.
I mean, we did. Right. But it took that kind of leadership, you
Sure.
know, somebody who could just take a licking and keep on ticking, as they say, you know.
Sure, sure. Do you think we can get there? I worry that we may have gotten too far down the road.
Well,
but I feel maybe there is a positive energy because everybody's happy here. It's a wonderful state.
Yeah, I think we can. I mean, you know, people talk about another civil war. They don't know what they're talking about. I knew a lot of people who lived through the Civil War. You know, we had horrible times. It wasn't the Civil War that caused all the hatred in the South. It was the Reconstruction in Raleigh. And you talk about history that people forget.
Right.
In Raleigh, they had buried a bunch of Confederates in the National Cemetery. The Reconstruction general, or whoever it was, came down here and ordered that all of them be dug up and taken out of that cemetery as traitors. And that's when Oakwood Cemetery in Raleigh got going. And they had a day when every business in Raleigh closed down. They went out and dug up Confederates, had women and boys moving bodies in wheelbarrows and stuff. You know, now that's a civil war.
Right.
This little mess we're going through now is just a bunch of talkers, bloviators, you know. but so yes, I think we can overcome it, but we're pretty far down the road. It's I don't know exactly how we'll do it, but I'm convinced we can.
Sure.
But
I am
tell
too.
you,
I feel like right now a lot of people are really worried about, feeding their families. We were talking about that earlier. Either going into November, what do you think those big issues are, or why do you think people vote the way they do?
Well, people tend to vote their self-interest, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's why you have a democracy and elect things. But I guess, well, I know we're all interested in our families. You certainly got to feed your family, all that, and that's getting, and amazingly, in some of what has been the most prosperous time in the history of the world, really, not just the United States and North Carolina, we have gotten around to a point where people, even if they have jobs, are having trouble paying for gas to get to work, all that sort of thing. And that has been mismanagement. I mean, there's just no getting around that. And both parties have a share in it. Both have overspent. Given away too much money to buy votes, and it has led us to this inflation and the hard times that we have and are going to have, and now we just gotta bow our necks and overcome it.
Do you think there's more to come then?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I continue to believe that we're perfectible. And that we'll make progress toward it, and the young people give me a lot of hope.
Good.
You hear about the bad ones and so on, but whenever I was dealt with university students and so on, I was just constantly amazed at how much smarter they were than I was. I mean, how much farther along, much more mature than I was at their age. And that always, I tell you, if you begin to get too depressed, you just need to get yourself around some of the young achievers. And this country's going to be all right.